Hello, and thanks for watching the solution video for Workout Wednesday for Power BI 2022, week 24. We are making scatter plots with a custom marker. Normally, the default visual in Power BI allows for just a handful of shapes, circles, squares, that type of thing. But we can get more creative with that. And as an example, we are visualizing melodies from Ella Fitzgerald songs. So there's two goals in this workout. We are turning notes or pitches into a quantitative scale so we can visualize it in the scatter plot. And we're making sure those notes are spaced out to represent the length of the note. Our data comes from data.world, and there are 3 worksheets within one Excel file. The first is the actual notes to the songs, and it has a song ID in the last column. There's a list of the distinct values for the notes in the note mapping. And then there's a list of the distinct songs. So the song ID here matches the song in music notes. Let's get started with a blank Power BI report. And we'll use our data.world connector. We're going to select all 3 sheets in the data set, and we'll go to transform data. And we'll go to song selection and just clean up our column names. Make them a little more user-friendly. Same thing with the table. Go to note mapping. Oops. And here, I added the music note for you, but in my version, I also included an 8th rest as an option. So anytime there is a kind of blank null in the music, we can add a rest as the custom marker instead of a note, since there is no note playing during that time. And to do that, I'm adding a custom column, and I'm going to say note or rest equals So if the value in the note column says rest instead of a pitch like C or B flat or something, then we're going to use this character dot from number, which is an 8th rest. It doesn't show up well in the Power Query editor, but it's fine when you get to your visual. Otherwise, it's the normal 8th note. So we get the question mark here, but it works out in the end. So now I can get rid of this note jar because I have replaced it. I'm going to add just a straight index to the table. And then part of the challenge is figuring out how do I visualize these different pitches in a way that makes sense so that in music, B flat is a half step below B, which is a half step below C. So all of these are sequential half steps. And we kind of denote this middle C. It's the middle. So we have basically an octave up from middle C and an octave down and then our rest. So how I did that was through a custom column. And notice I started with an index of 0. And I'm calling this distance. So if the note equals a rest, then the distance is 0, and we'll just visualize that rest in the same place as middle C. Otherwise, because there's a total of 6 whole steps between C and C, because two of them are half steps here, B to C is a half step even though there's no flat in between, and then E and F. So if it's a rest, visualize it just like middle C. Otherwise, 6, meaning top of the scale, minus whatever our index number is, times 0.5, because each one of these is a half step. And then the rest is 0, middle C is 0. Then we just need to make sure our data type is indeed a decimal number. Basically, we're getting rid of the ones that are any. This can be text, and the rest are okay. Now we can go back to our music notes table. And we'll rename, make these look a little nicer. And now to get the notes, we need to join or merge to our note mapping table. So I'm going to merge queries to note mapping. But I need to merge on 2 fields. So I need to do pitch, and then distance middle C, and here I called it note, and distance middle C. And that gives us a table which we can then expand. I don't need all these columns, but I do want distance and note or rest. And I renamed my index to count because we're counting the number of eighth notes essentially from the beginning of the song. And you'll see when we get through with song 2 and start song 3, it starts over again. And we do not have to sort, but I'm going to sort ascending just to see that our order column goes through sequentially and does not reset at the song ID as opposed to the count. that should be it on the Power Query side. Now that I have my data model, I'm going to add in the extra stuff around my scatter chart. And then I'm going to format my page. So what I'm doing is setting my wallpaper to be gray to better match kind of the theme, the feel of the photo that I used. And then my actual canvas background is transparent, so the gray is coming through. I'm going to go customize my current theme. The first thing is the background should be 100% transparent. And then I would like to use Georgia as my font everywhere. Better. And I will go ahead. Oh, forgot to do one thing in Power Query. I can now disable the load on note mapping because I have used what I need and put it in my music notes table. So now it's simply song selection and music notes. I'm going to use song selection to populate my drop down. Move it over to the side here. And I formatted that. To make the actual drop down a little lighter so it's obvious you need to choose after you read the instructions. And I also want to make sure single select is on. So something has to be selected, but you can only select one thing at a time. Next, I made my scatter chart using Deneb. So I need to go and get the Deneb custom visual. And I'll add it to my page here. And first I will populate it. So I need count. I didn't mean to include the table prefix, which I could have fixed back earlier, but that's okay. We can do it here. So I need count, distance, note char, and pitch. And then I can start editing. I'm going to start empty, which gives me a Vega Light template. And I'm pasting this in, but I'll talk through it. And And this is not looking quite right because my count got summed and I don't want to summarize. Now that's better. Okay, so here's what we did in the Deneb visual. We have multiple marks in here, multiple layers. And the first ones are these lines that go across. I wanted to give some kind of gauge of what the distance is like between those notes. And so those marks are hard-coded to the value -2 in my distance. Sorry, not -2. They're hard-coded. Those are hard-coded to certain values. And what I found is that when I'm using this particular music note mark, the music note, the lines, other lines that cross through it pick the center, so I lowered it just slightly. So when you see -0.2, it's actually 0, which is middle C. So I have a line running through middle C that I just kind of made a medium gray, so it shows up but doesn't stand out a lot. And the way Z order works in Deneb is whatever you put first is on the bottom. So I wanted my music notes on top of these rules. So I have middle C. This is 6, which is the octave above C. 3.5 is G. -3.5 is F. So C, G, C. This is F down at the bottom. And it just so happens in song number 2 we don't go down that low. I think there are other songs that do. But that at least gives some idea to someone of spacing if they kind of know musical scales. That's not required. That's just something I added in that I thought was helpful. The scatterplot is the last thing because we want that on top. So it's a markup type text because I'm using Unicode characters as my mark. I made it a really big font size so the music notes would show up. And I didn't enable tooltips on this, so when you hover over a music note, it doesn't say anything. There was no extra value to be gained by that because we're not really trying to say this is the note F. It's more about, can you tell by the pattern visualized in the scatterplot what this melody is? So we encode that on our x-axis by using the count. Remember, this is basically the count of eighth notes, the beat, based on eighth notes. It is a quantitative value. We turned off labels. I didn't want titles on this one. I turned off the grid and the ticks. And then on Y, we do the distance. That's that calculation we did to show essentially distance from middle C, but distance of notes from each other, depending on how you wanted to implement that. Again, I turned off labels, ticks, titles, grid, because I added those rules separately myself. And then the actual mark is populated by data. So again, that's where we did that custom column for the Unicode character. That is a nominal categorical thing, and then I told it what color to match the rest of my report. Make this just a little smaller here. So that gives us the basics of the report. A tisket, a tasket, the melody is a bit higher. Blue skies is a little lower. And cheek to cheek is a little bit all over the place, but it hits the lowest notes. Now, if you want to do the guessing game, instead of putting song name, we would do song choice, so it obscures the actual name. And if you want to make a button to reveal the song name like I did, you add a button. I chose rectangular, and then populated the text to say reveal the song name. Again, maintaining consistent font. And this is one bookmark. So I need to go to my bookmark pane and add a bookmark here. I'm going to call this one Name That Tune. I don't really care about, I don't want to include the data because I don't want the slicer to get changed. So here's state one where they're guessing. Then I added a card, just a regular card, and I put in the song name and formatted it with a background color that's kind of a lighter version of the color I've been using throughout the chart. And then I put a different button, but same idea, that says hide the song name. So now if I take my original button and hide that, we're in the second state. And so we can use our bookmarks then. We can use our bookmarks then to take us between the two states. So on show song, I have the show button hidden and the other two objects shown. Then I'm going to go back to Name That Tune and hide my card, the hide button, and put the show button back and update that. Oops, yeah, I meant to set all visual. Sorry about that. Now, as I flip back and forth, we'll see the correct answer. So we need to make sure that our button is set to go to the other bookmark, and this button takes us back. So if I change the song, we'll see the notes change and the answer change. And that's about it. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this Workout Wednesday for Power BI challenge.